as we were reciting the Heart Sutra, we came to the line, Mukege, Mukege, so Ushu, everything is revealed. Mukege means when the mind is not covering reality with its thoughts, then the whole world opens up. So I thought with the fog here, it's time to open up. Timely. The other thing that happened, and I told Dave about this, when I gathered my papers together today, I found sitting on my desk this paper right on top. And these are actually scrap papers that I use for writing, keeping my notes. So I keep a file full of papers that I have an open side on. So I said, oh, I didn't see this yesterday. I don't know where this came from. What is it? Eihei Koso Hotsugamu, Dogen's Vows, final paragraph of the Song of the Valley Streams. So I hadn't seen this. I don't even remember when I took this. This is probably years old. And it was sitting right on top of my pile as I turned the sheets over. Who says there aren't miracles? This is his vows. I vow with all beings from this life on throughout countless lives to hear the true Dharma, that upon hearing it no doubt will arise in me, or I lack faith, that upon meeting it I shall renounce worldly affairs and maintain the Buddha Dharma, and that in doing so, the great earth and living beings together will attain the Buddha way. That summarizes my talk for today. Now we can go on, let's meditate. So what inspired this was, I've always, it's hard to miss Dogen. If you're around for very long with any Zen book, Dogen comes up. Probably one of the most influential figures in Japanese Buddhism, at least, and it's made its way here in the West as well. So when I was in Kyoto last May, I was at the City Hall looking at the City Cultural Center in Kyoto, going through their bookshelves, and I came up with this book, Master Dogen. This is in all the other books were bicycle magazines and everything else that you would find in a bookstore. Master Dogen's Zen's Zazen Meditation Handbook. Another great find, Senator. And I looked on the back page, and so this is just another hokey Dogen posh off that someone's come up with. So I had the good sense to look at the back page. Comment by this reviewer was, a fine introduction to the spirit of Zen, both past and present. Dogen's famous text on Zen practice comes alive in the hands of a modern meditation master. The translation well captures the sense of Dogen's original text and the clarity and humanity that made Uchiyama Roshi one of the most attractive Zen teachers. Carl Bielefeld, Professor of Religious Studies, Stanford University, and my colleague all through graduate studies at Berkeley. If Carl says this is okay, I can buy it. Carl's specialty was meditation manuals and the Sotos and meditation manuals. So he translated the major text, the meditation text, for this, for the Soto sect, which is the Fukan Zazenji, major meditation manual. But anyway, let me give you some background now to what we're going to talk about. As a result of giving this, I read more Dogen than I've read my entire life. And I'm sorry that I started now. Should have started earlier. And the commentator, Uchiyama Roshi, who I didn't have the good fortune to meet when I was in Kyoto, he was teaching then, and this was happening then. But he comments that there were two books that people who are interested in Dogen studies that are amenable. One is this book, and the other is the Genjo Koan. What is it? Genjo Koan, yeah. Those two are the most popular, the most commonly read books in Japan, at least, maybe the rest of the world. So this should be a fairly concise summary of our approach to meditation. Or is it our approach? It really comes out quite different than anything I've seen before. But it was a very stimulating read. So I became so involved with it that that's why I'm talking about it today, because my head's still full of all this stuff. Now, everything went wrong today, but that's all right. I wanted to put this on paper that I could hand out to people, but the dog ate my paper. Or actually, I couldn't get the printer to work. So, what I'd like to do is give you a sampling of some of the primary parts of this text that would be useful in informing our practice of meditation, or not. It's rather unique. But what we'll do is we'll start with a koan. Actually, it was printed in this book. And then we'll read the first section, the first part of this book, which is only 1 page long. But it's packed. It's a summary of the entire text. So we'll touch on the high points, and then it'll be up to you in the future if you want to go further to go into any one of those ideas. But as you see, my voice is rising in octaves as we speak. So Elisa has very kindly offered to do the readings of the text for me in a deep baritone voice. But to start with, I know why I brought this. That's where I saved the text. I looked at this morning, just now, and I said, why did I bring this? Sure, I have the text here. This is the way the handbook is structured. Dogen. I'll get to Dogen later. This is Dogen's, he composed this text, and it was published, it was written in 1233. So it's in the middle of the Sung Dynasty, which was the era of flourishing of Buddhism among intellectuals and artists in China and Japan. And this is the first text of its kind. Many other sutras describe meditation. This is the first manual type description. So it's a practical guide to how one would meditate, given the basic assumptions that are made in Sutta. So one of the expressions we hear all the time is, the mind is not different from the Buddha is not different from the mind. This very mind, this very body, is the Buddha. This,
You want us to pass that?
yeah. A friend of mine in Kyoto is a potter, and he works with other artists. So pass this on to me. The Chinese characters on the side says, this very body is the Buddha. So the structure of the text is that Dogen first describes his experience in China. He went to China in 1223, stayed for 4 years, and came back with this text. And he was born in 1200, so he was 23 years old when he went to China. When he came back at the age of 27, he'd composed this massive text on meditation and this brief summary of meditation. And this is probably he began as a monk in Kyoto in about the age of 14 or 15. And finally was not satisfied with teaching, with Buddhism as it was being presented in Japan. So took off for China. Took off for China. So that he describes in the first part of this book, and why he wants to teach this. Second part of the book is, it's like a survey that you take with your graduates or any students in any education program. Every teacher knows this. Find out what are the big questions that the students have after you've given them a course for a year. What are the questions they most commonly ask? Or it's the reviews you get on Amazon for what people want to know about the product. And they pick out the most common ones. So this book then contains 18 questions asked by students and Dogen's answer to the questions based on the Fuken Zazenji. And he published 4 were written and I couldn't call it publishing. I don't think it was printed. It circulated in 1227. We're going to look at the number 16th question. And Elise is going to play the part of the helpless student.
Let me know when you're ready.
Okay. Question 16.
Okay, here's question 16. Someone said, in Buddha Dharma, those who thoroughly understand the principle that mind itself is Buddha, even if they do not chant sutras with their mouths or practice the Buddha way with their bodies, still lack nothing at all of Buddha Dharma. Simply knowing that the Buddha Dharma exists in the self from the beginning is the perfect accomplishment of the way. Outside of this, you should not seek from other people, much less take the trouble to engage the way in Zazen. Doesn't sound like a question to me, but anyway.
The next line, where is it?
The
What
reply,
does Dogen say?
Dogen says in his reply, these words are total nonsense. If it is as you said, how could anyone with cognition fail to understand when taught this principle? You should know that Buddha Dharma is studied by truly giving up the view that discriminates between self and others. If just knowing that the self is itself, Buddha, was attainment of the way, Shakyamuni would not have taken the trouble in ancient times to give guidance. Now I will confirm this with an excellent example from an ancient worthy. Long ago, Gensoku was the director monk in the assembly of Zen master Hogen. Hogen asked him, Director Gensoku, how long have you been in my assembly? Shall I go to the next one?
No, I'm going to read that one. I've already been in the Master's Assembly for 3 years. Oh, no, that's you.
Gensoku replied, I have already been in the Master's Assembly for 3 years. Hogan said, you are
That's me. That's me.
Oh, Hogan is you? Okay.
You were a student. Why haven't you ever asked me about the Buddha Dharma?
Gensoku said, I cannot deceive you, O teacher. Once when I was at Zen Master Seiho's place, I realized the peace and joy of Buddha Dharma.
With which words were you able to enter?
Genso responded, I once asked Seiho, what is the self of the student? That is my own self, Seiho said. The fire boy comes seeking fire.
Good words. However, I'm afraid that you did not really understand them.
Gensoku said, my understanding is that the fire boy belongs to fire, already fire, still he seeks fire, just like being self and seeking self.
Now I really know that you didn't understand it. If Buddha Dharma was like that, it would not have been transmitted up to today.
At this, Gensoku was overwrought and left immediately. On the road, he thought, the master is one of the world's fine teachers and also the guiding teacher of 500 people. Certainly there must be merit in his pointing out my error. He returned to Hogan and after doing prostrations and repentance, asked, what is the self of this student?
The fire boy comes seeking fire.
With these words, Gensoku was greatly enlightened to Buddha Dharma.
And that's the end of the conversation. Now there's going to be a comment.
Shall I read it?
Yeah.
Understandably, no, I'm sorry. Let's see if I can turn this to get bigger print. Understand clearly that to comprehend, quote, the self is itself Buddha, end quote, cannot be called understanding Buddha Dharma. If the comprehension that self is itself Buddha was the Buddha Dharma, Zen Master Hogan would not have used that saying for guidance or made such an admonishment. admonishment. From the time you first meet a good teacher, just genuinely inquire about the manners and standards of practice. Single-mindedly engage in the.
That's it. The last one is, you don't need it.
Okay. Single-mindedly engage in the practice.
Okay, so there we go with the mind is the body is they're all the same. It comes up in many texts. It becomes very central to a lot of Dogen's teachings as well, and Soto Zen. What's the problem here? You notice that the two assertions, the student says, the fire boy comes seeking fire. And you say, well, that's wrong. You didn't understand. Then when the student asks Dogen, he says exactly the same thing. What's going on? We'll get to that. That's the setup. That's in fact exactly the issue that Dogen is introducing at the beginning of this book.
Is it the difference between the small self and the large self? Or should I wait till we come?
And what does that mean?
Right. I'll wait.
If I can answer it now. I understood it at one time. That's the problem with Dogen. You understand him and then you look at it 10 minutes later. What did he say? But this book deals with it fairly well. So let's go to the first text. The way we're going to do this is Elise will read short text. I'll unpack it. I'll give some my interpretation of my understanding of the text that she read. This is Dogen writing and me commenting. And then after that, she'll read another text, another two texts, and it will be Uchiyama Roshi speaking. So when Carl says this is a nice composite of a 12th century text and 20th century text on the same topic. And then we'll go on that. After that, we'll go into some discussion. So do you want to start with the first text?
Is that page 116?
No,
Which page are we talking about?
20. Oh, it is 116.
So here's the quote or the text. In the true Zazen, enlightenment.
Oh, no. No, it's the one I sent you well before.
Separately, okay. A different text. Different. The talk on the wholehearted practice of the way.
Yes.
Translation, is that the one?
That's it.
Okay.
And the wholehearted practice of the way is the name of the book.
Right.
So,
this is a talk on the wholehearted practice of the way, a translation of Eihei Dogen's Bendowa. All Buddha Tathagatas together have been simply transmitting wondrous Dharma and actualizing Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, for which there is an unsurpassable, unfabricated, wondrous method. This wondrous Dharma, which has been transmitted only from Buddha to Buddha without deviation, has as its criterion Jijuyu Zanmai, What is Juju Zanmai?
That's what we're going to talk about. That's the whole thing.
Okay. For disporting oneself freely in this samadhi, practicing zazen in an upright posture is the true gate. Although this dharma is abundantly inherent in each person, it is not manifested without practice. It is not attained without realization. When you let go, the dharma fills your hands. It is not within the boundary of one or many. When you try to speak, it fills your mouth. It is not limited to vertical or horizontal. Buddhas continuously dwell in and maintain this dharma, yet no trace of conceptualization remains. Living beings constantly function and use this dharma, yet it does not appear in their perception. The wholehearted practice of the way that I am talking about allows all things to exist in enlightenment and enables us to live out oneness in the path of emancipation. When we break through the barrier and drop all limitations, we are no longer concerned with conceptual distinctions.
Okay. So let's go back through that slowly. That was a lot. Did you get that all? Take notes.
Will it be on the quiz?
Be on the final.
On the final, okay.
So all Buddhas and Tathagatas simply transmit the wondrous Dharma. All Buddhas and Tathagatas, Uchiyama Roshi, and Dogen had a very different understanding of what Buddha means than most of the Buddhist tradition in China. Uchiyama Roshi, when he's commenting on this phrase, said, "This is a complex, and I'll get to this later, so I'll leave it aside now. I won't talk about how he defined that. But then the second problem he said is, Dogen mentions the Dharma, but he doesn't define it, and none of the commentaries define it. So I, Uchiyama Roshi, will define it and discuss what it means. The original dharmas are discrete objects of perception in the six senses. They exist as realities, as material realities, separate from the self in the early Buddhist tradition. So meditation was on the dharmas. There are 72 of them in the Sarvastivada tradition. Different kinds of dharmas, 72 different kinds. It was posited that they were the only thing that exists are dharmas, even of the self, in the early Buddhist texts. Mahayana took issue with that. He said, no, even the dharmas are empty. And dharmas then became merely empty perceptions that depended on other things to be what they were defined as being. Now that's a simple explanation of dharmas. But they rejected the idea that there was any material reality. It was mental. And the Buddhas simply transmitted. In the Chinese text, it means only one or directly transmitted, simply. So there's only one Dharma that he transmits. And there's only one simple way that he does it. And all the Buddhists transmit. And it's transmitted from the beginning of the first Buddha, through the sixth patriarch, down to the present. When we were chanting the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra this morning, we said, the Buddhas attain Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which is the enlightenment of the Buddha. And you're using a wondrous method. This method is different than any that the Buddhists, Mahayana Buddhism in general, had propounded. Only from Buddha to Buddha, without deviation. And its criterion is Jijuyu Samma. This is the meditation that Dogen is going to talk about for the rest of the book. It's one that even I knew about it, but I hadn't seen it in such detail. It's the self itself creating the self. And that was a term that Dogen created for his understanding of the transmission. The self only transmits only the self. There's no outside. There's no other. It's a non-dualistic way of talking about a non-dualistic phenomenon. The self itself translates only the self, transmits only the self by a wondrous method. The method is the Jijuyu Samma. Samma is focus, concentration. So, or meditation, but let's not use the word meditation yet. Samma is a state of, sam means put together, and my, samyak, means put in place. So everything, all your mind is put in place in one spot, which is the way, in general, Buddhists talk about meditation. This is one single kind of meditation that Dogen is presenting. And that's what the entire book is about. Self only transmitting only the self. One of his examples of that was when Shakyamuni had finished giving a talk. He wondered if anybody understood that. So Mahakashapa held up a flower. Actually, Buddha held up a flower. And Mahakashapa smiled. That was the first transmission. There were no words. That's what the Juju Samma is. It's a non-dualistic transmission. Buddha, the self on itself, by itself, creates the self. So what he's doing, what Dogen is doing here, he's creating the frame for how one talks about meditation. This is what one does in meditation. Self by itself creates the self. There's no outside. And that self is transmitted. Makes no distinction between subject and object. There's not something else outside that I'm transmitting. I'm transmitting only what's in the self. What's in the self is non-conceptual. It's psychologists talk about infants up to the age of 2 years old don't have a strong sense of the other or memory of past events. And the explanation for that, and I found in a UC Davis neurological psychologist book, was that can't think of the organ in the brain doesn't develop. That organ in the brain is where most of our memories of past events exist. So a 2-year-old, few people remember their life before 2 in general. That life before 2 where you don't remember, where the hippocampus doesn't, it's just developing. It's not even functioning very well until we get to 2. That's the mind before conceptualization. I don't know if the psychologists would agree with that, and it's not because it's scientific, that's just a metaphor for the same idea. There is a pre-maturity state of the mind. It starts developing all of this at 2. And we begin to become able to separate ourselves from what's outside of us. How do we get back to that stage before? And we don't want to get back to being a 2-year-old, but it's still a state of mind that isn't distinguishing between inside and outside, self and other. And that precedes all conceptualization. Conceptualization takes place on the basis of that. Jiju Sanmai is a state of mind where one has not stepped out into the conceptualized notion of reality. It's the original mind of the Buddha. It's not what Dogen will go on to say is that the mind itself is the Buddha in individuals. And therefore, it's not transmitting anything outside. It's simply tapping into the pre-dualistic state of mind. And that can be the way to do that. And I'm summarizing parts from the later the book. Well, actually, he'll say it here in a moment. What he says is to sit upright like this. That's the way it's transmitted, but it's the whole body. For disporting one freely in this samadhi, practicing zazen is an upright posture. In an upright posture is the true gate, one gate. Sitting upright in the posture, nothing else. True gate, Jiju Sanmai, only one gate. In vows we take when we finish today. We'll say there are multiple. How do we say that? What's the third vow?
The dharmas are boundless. We vow to master them.
And the Chinese and Japanese is actually the Dharma gates are boundless. I've always wondered why we don't put gates there. This is access.
Honmo Myoran.
No, he uses it too, yeah. They use gates. So right up to the time of Dogen, everyone's talking about the multiple gates we vow to master. Dogen says there's only one gate. Don't worry about all the rest. And that gate is the Jijui Sanmai. Although the Dharma is abundantly inherent in each person, it is not manifested without practice. It is not attained without realization. That takes us back to Hogan. His student comes to him and says, I now understand that the mind is the Buddha. But he's only been with Gensho for 4 years. Uchiyama Roshi takes this and said, when a student comes to me and asks for training, I teach them this Zanmai, this Jaju Zanmai. And if they practice it for 10 years, they might be beginning to get an idea of what's going on. But I tell them actually that maybe they should go 20 years before they get a hold of this. And that's the maturation process. Because we're so addicted to using the composite mind, constructed mind. We need to break the habit. And if you do that, then the Dharma fills your hands. This is what Uchiyama Roshi calls what's the name of his first book? The Open Hand. No, that's not it. My mind isn't clicking on phones. The open hand of thought.
Opening the hand.
Opening the hand of thought. Which is letting go of concepts, letting go of anything that happens in the mind. So when you're sitting in Jiyu Sanmai, you're not trying to get rid of thoughts. You're not trying to think good thoughts. When they come, you let them go. So a lot of people when I first talk to some people, they say, oh, what you do is empty your mind, and then you're not, and if any thoughts come up, you've got to get rid of them right away. No, you just watch them and let them go away. No koans, no tricks, no gadgets, just follow the thoughts as they arise. Be aware, that's all. Don't judge them, good or evil. The 6th century Buddhist sage Juri said, apart from Buddha, there is no evil. Apart from evil, there is no Buddha. This is what they're talking about, and what makes it comprehensible to me, at least, as I understand it, He said, when one is sitting in the sunlight, one is active in the world. One isn't out doing things. This is when you have access to that. So, a lot that comes up in mind seems counterproductive or evil and despicable, but it's happening here. And you're sitting, you don't move, and space is silent. So that's the training he's talking about. And think about this in terms of the first exchange that we had about the monk and the teacher. I now understand that the mind is Buddha. The important word is understand. That's a conceptualization of what the mind is Buddha means. Furthermore, Dogen says, when you experience the mind as Buddha, you go beyond it. And it doesn't define what's beyond it. But he said, and even at that point, let it go. Because the next day you won't be there. You'll be back at base zero again. Don't hang on to it. Don't push it out. So when the confident student comes to Dogen to actually hold him, very proud of himself, I now understand. I feel like I now understand that too. And he said, you haven't done it, you haven't understood it for 10 years, maybe 20 years. It might take to become, to find that, to experience that. So the Jiju Sanmai is the raw experience before it's divided into good or bad. Any of those. Finish this text. Then we'll get on to the two other texts and we'll open it for discussion. It's not manifested without practice. It fills your hands. One of the explanations, it fills your mouth. Once you experience that, you can't say anything anymore. It becomes wordless. Your mouth is stuffed. That was one of Uchiyama's explanations of that one. No trace of conceptualization remains. Living beings continue to use that. And even though it doesn't appear in perception, when Dogen talks about mind, he's not talking about the consciousness, psychological consciousness only. He's talking about the entire life force. When you're alive, you're a thinking entity. Even conceptualization is part of one's innate tendencies as a human being. That's the way we deal with the world. All of that is within the Jiju Sanmai. And it's important to get back to the Jiju Sanmai to see that. So even if you don't perceive it, it's happening. Uchiyama Roshi uses the example of learning to drive a car. Uchiyama Roshi says, I don't drive a car, it scares the daylights out of me. And I get tense when somebody says I should start learning how to drive. said, but once you drive for a while, put on the brake, you turn the wheel without even thinking about it. You don't have to conceptualize it. You don't have to plan it. It becomes automatic almost. So it's not perceived. I have to turn here. The hands know what to do, the feet knows what to do. It's not the conscious mind. It's not conscious thought that turns the car. It's the pre-proceptors, other parts of the brain. No trace of conceptualization remains. Living beings constantly function and use this Dharma. Therefore, i.e., they are Buddhas. Because they're living in their own life force. The Chinese have the concept of qi. Qi is life energy. Fills the whole body. It's all around us. All of life is qi. It's a form of energy. It's a form of life. When you die, the qi goes someplace else. That's what Uchiyama Roshi seems to be talking about when he talks about the life force, that is the mind. So mind for Uchiyama Roshi is defined as the life force, not just the psychological conscious mind, but the entire body. And that's the Buddha. Mind becomes Buddha. Now we all understand that. We still fail the test with Hogan. So we have to institute that. And that's only achieved through silent meditation. Okay, let's go on to the second one.
To be continued in part 2.
We're already at that time.
Because I'm cutting you off.
We're out
Cutting
of
me off.
time. We're out of time, so maybe.
Really?
I know.
That's what I said. To be continued. Part 2.
And I think Anton had planned on the 27th, 2 weeks from now, for possibly part 2 of this. So
Possibly.
yeah,
Now it's a probability.
I think high probability.
High.
Yeah.
Good. One comment, one question, anyone? Any comment? 2 questions?
Brief comment. It just really resonated with the, for me, one of my favorite meditative practice that when I'm struggling is this imagery of the bowl and pouring it out. And as you were speaking, thinking about conceptualizations that we form that we have to abandon, I kept thinking about that on meditative practice in my own life, with filling the bowl of my life with whatever anxieties or conceptions, whether good or bad, and emptying them out to try to enter in.
Yeah.
I
I was hoping to get more voices in here earlier. We didn't get there. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even get.
I think 10 or 20 years is wishful thinking. I'm going on 50.
Actually, what she said. It says, I say the 20, but there's probably more. It's got to take place. So it's, well, I'll say